Hi class, welcome back. Today we are going to be making what is called a perfect binding signature structure. And this one is actually fairly simple. It is just a glued spine binding, which can be really useful if you're making notebooks, sketchbooks, or thicker books like photo books. So I'm going to run through the process of how we go ahead and make this. This is one that I have made last night so that I can show you how to add a slipcover to this. So then I'm going to also just show you the beginnings of how you set up your materials and glue the spine. So what you will need, my book is, you can do this any size, but I ended up doing this 5x8. Your cover sheets, you'll want to cut 2 to size. This is for my sample is 5x8. You can do any size you want. The cover boards, they can be thicker, but they also could be any kind of cardstock. So either way will work. I had these printed pieces that I did letterpress before we had went on to online education, so I just use these ones. Then you will also want to have some internal pages that should be text weight sheets. I have Mohawk here, which is kind of like the weight of copy paper. So you could use any of that for your sample book. You can go ahead and just use simple copy paper. What I have done though is, because I've cut this a specific way so that the grain of the paper actually runs with the spine, so vertical with the spine. So if you end up running into trouble with that, obviously if you run the grain with the spine, it's going to open and close, lay flatter, much nicer. But if you're just using copy paper and you're not able to cut it with the grain for the spine, I wouldn't worry about that so much, just for a prototype, okay? I have about 50 pages in the content of my book. You can do any size that you would like, but I would say to do it a little bit thicker than thinner. This ends up equaling the spine about 1/4 of an inch thick, which is, I think, a kind of a good amount. Anything smaller, it could start to, the pages, can start to fall out anyway, that you want to make sure that they're glued in really well. But I just think that it works best if it's a little bit of a thicker structure. I have made some with students where it's been a little thinner, so you can try all that, but I wouldn't go too much thinner than that. Okay, so the other things that you will actually need with you, you'll need a brush for gluing, your PVA glue. I've got just a little container for my glue to sit in. You're going to also need an X-Acto knife, mechanical pencil, your bone folder. This will be for later on when we do the slipcover, a ruler, my cutting mat, which is down here, and then again just your 2 cover sheets, back in the front cover and your back side of your book, and then also your text block for the inside of your sheet. The other thing that you will actually need with this all is, I use 2 sheets of acrylic because I have them here in my studio. You could use you could use 2 pieces of wood, thinner wood if you want, or something really kind of thicker. The cardboard tends to actually be a little squishy, so I'd use a kind of a hard board actually, but you could use a masonite board for something. We're going to be putting the books in between here to hold it tight while we glue it. The other thing I have here is some clamps. You could use C-clamps if you have them available. If you don't have anything like these clamps available, you could maybe also put some heavy books on top of the boards after you've gotten it aligned perfectly, but you just don't want to move it while it's like that. But any kind of heavy weight will do. The clamps work best if you do have them around. So we're going to start. I'm just going to show you how to put your book together with the covers and get it prepped in these acrylic sheets with the clamps and show you the basic gluing. And then after that, I'm going to show you how to create a slipcover for the book that I made last night, so that you can see, if you don't want the glue, you could have the glue spine showing, which is nice and sometimes looks pretty cool. It dries clear the PVA. I've also seen students dye it with a pigment, and that can look really cool as well. But if you don't want that to show, you can also do a slip cover, which I'll show you how to do as well. Okay, so let's get started with the basics of putting this together. So I've added my front and back cover to my text block, okay, and then I am going to, and just a reminder that your text block and your cover and backside page, they're all the same size. Then I'm going to stack them so that this is a nice flush spine, okay, and I want to make sure that it's kind of a knocking sound. Once I get it where it seems very, very flush, I'm going to hold it very tightly and place it just right kind of on the edge here. I want to create a little lip on the outside of the board or the acrylic, whichever one you use. And then I'm going to line up my other one. And I've moved this a little bit. That'll be the one thing that's kind of frustrating, is sometimes they move a little. Just be patient, but it's very important you get it very flush, because if not, you could end up not gluing some pages. Okay, and you could even actually, once you get it pretty tight, just hold it with one. Kind of make it hard there. Okay, I'm gonna lay it very carefully down. Okay, and so I've got this edge on the outside here, and then I'm going to take these clamps and I'm just going to come in and clamp on either side, but you want to make sure that you don't cover up any area of the spine that you're going to be gluing. Okay, and then I'm using another one on this side, getting it pretty tight. Maybe I have to do it over here. Okay, so it's out of the way. Now the thing with this is kind of awkward is now, because of my clamps, I really can't have it on the table, but I can try and show you. So flipping it around, you can see that there's, I just want you to kind of see how it's set up with the clamps, and then the front edge of the spine is on the outside here, because when I flip it around to start gluing, you're not going to be able to see that. The other thing I want to show you is, because you're just going to be gluing this edge and you're going to do it in layers of glue, so maybe I'll just try and show you this way if I can. So in an ideal situation, obviously you're going to have this set down with it sitting over a table edge. I'm just holding it in place so that you can actually see what's happening. But I'm taking some glue on my brush and I'm just going to go across, and sorry, it's just kind of hard for me to see what's happening here. But you don't have to be so really careful with the edges of the glue coming around, because it dries and it's dries clear, so that should be okay. But you want to do a nice thin layer, and then you let that dry, and you're just going to keep doing layers like this for, I leave it usually for 24 hours, and I come back and I do maybe about 6 to 10 layers. Okay, and the reason I do so many layers is the more glue I put on there, the more likely it's to have a really good hold. Okay, so you would do this and then just kind of set it aside, and maybe like every hour or so I add a new layer to it. Okay, so that I put onto the side there, and what ends up happening is you end up having this kind of spine glued, okay, that ends up opening really nicely, okay, with no slipping. All right, so the last thing I want to show you is how to make a slip cover for your Perfect Bound book. So this one, just to get your measurements correct with whatever size you use, again, my book is 5x8. It's 8 inches this way, 5 inches wide. My spine here is 1/4 of an inch. So when you're making your cover slip, cutting it to size, you're going to want to do 8 times 2 plus your spine, whatever that size is. So the length times 2 plus your spine. And then what I'm doing is I'm creating a turn-in so that it sits inside my cover and back page. And so that I've made half of the length of my cover. So that's another 4 inches on either side. So the total for this one then is 24 inches and a quarter. Okay, for the front, back, spine, and the internal turn in. Okay, so I have just grabbed a sheet of cardstock that I had here at the house that's printed, and I'm going to start by turning it around and folding it in at 4 inches. And then after I do the 4-inch turn in, then I'm going to do the one part of my spine, and I'm going to keep moving along. So I'll show you from start to finish here. So I go in and add 2 small tick marks with my mechanical pencil, so I've got a good way to measure them. And with my bone folder, I take the tip and I score it about 3 or 4 times. Okay. That will make an embossed line, and then there I can fold it back. I make sure that it's flush on either side, and then I fold from the middle out either direction. Okay, so that's my first turn in. From that fold, then I'm going to go 8 inches. That's going to be my cover. So I'm going to go right to that folded edge. It's always good to do it this way from the fold because you lose a little bit of the paper when you do the fold as well. Okay, so then I've got this at 8 inches. Now I've got that fold and cover. Next I'm going to do my spine, which that is a quarter. Okay. And I'm going to come from this direction to make it easier for folding since it's a small little area. Okay, line them up again. Okay, so now I've got that folded in, and then I've got my little spine edge. And then I go from that fold another 8 inches for my back cover. So now we're going to take and put this in. The spine sits in here like this, and then we just wrap the intern around the front cover, and it also fits right around the back like so. And so that will actually make a nice wrapped cover. And when you open it up, you see part of the slip in there. Okay, you can glue the spine if you want it to be adhered. So I would, at that point, I would take a little bit of glue and add that to the inside of your spine, and then you're going to want to carefully just glue that spine cover down. And then I would just leave these flaps open so that they are loose and can be moved. But generally speaking, for slip covers, I just leave them unglued like that. And you could use any kind of slip cover you want. You could make your own design with silkscreen, anything you want. Any kind of cardstock will work really well. The best thing to do is to make it so that the folds for the spine are still running grain long, but that means you're going to have to find a pretty lengthy sheet. But that is a slip covered perfect bind for you, and then there is the book without it, so you could see how that works. So remember again, when you go ahead and put the glue on the spine, that you're going to want to do 6 to 10 layers and leave it overnight so that it's nice and dry before you put it all together. Take it out of the hinges. So have fun with this one. Hope it's useful. Have a good one. Bye.